Hi everyone, this is Matt from the Three Falls Wrestling Podcast. Normally we would open a show with jokes, some banter between two friends who watch wrestling. This episode, we're going to focus on the speaking out movement. Before the show starts, I just wanted to preface this with, we wanted to show the victims as much respect as we could. Victims of alleged abuse, assault, rape, everything that's been reported thus far. We want to stress that these allegations are just that at this point. Allegations. We get into some topics on the show regarding training, schools, trainers, culture of the business. And while we have some poignant views on things like entry-level age in wrestling schools, we want to make it clear that the victims are still victims, no matter what the policies and procedures are in facilities, in promotions, in anywhere in society. I encourage everyone who's having difficulty during this time to reach out to a friend, family member, anyone you trust that you can speak with. I'd also encourage anyone to check out RAINN, RAINN, on Twitter. RAINN is an organization I've followed for several years on the recommendation from Mick Foley. And it's a organization that focuses on survivors from sexual assault. Again, we want to make it very clear that we're by no means putting any blame on any of the alleged victims, and we're not accusing any of the alleged abusers either. This is strictly a discussion based on the information we had up until the time we recorded this on Friday night. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, concerns, or even feedback about the show, please feel free to reach us on Twitter at 3fallspodcast or email us at 3fallspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
We got to address the elephant in the room. Matt, you know a lot more about this than I do, so I'm going to be leaning on you here with all the information. On Thursday, I don't know who the female was, what her name was, but she came out and made allegations against David Starr. She was a former ex, is that true?
That's correct.
And she made allegations of abuse.
So let's preface this. I'm sure not everybody probably knows who David Starr is. So we'll just start there real quick. David Starr is an independent wrestler from the United States who primarily worked in Europe.
Yeah.
He founded a company called We the Independent, I believe is what it's called, which was a company designed to promote independent talent that wasn't signed to kind of take care of them through apparel and different things. I'm not real strong in what that project was, but I know it was based on unsigned talent.
Because he was always vocal about that, right? About not having health benefits. And
he was very outspoken and very, as he put it, anti-contract. Was not interested in, from what he said, in signing contracts with any major companies because of them not taking care of talent. And he had some prominence about a year or so ago with Ring of Honor. They booked him to wrestle in, it was Israel, against Jay Lethal, and he cut a controversial promo about him being on the card only because he was of Jewish descent.
Ooh.
Which Ring of Honor pulled the promo. And he also had a controversial match with Walter where he stomped on the WWE United Kingdom Championship during the match.
I remember that. I remember that controversy, like when that came out and everything like that. So he's always been controversial.
Yes, he was a well-known figure on the independent scene, primarily in Europe. So what had happened yesterday was there was a former girlfriend of David Starr that had released some information regarding their relationship and basically had said that there was definitely some abuse and she had alleged a rape as well. against David Starr. And
Wow.
basically, what transpired from there was other women spoke out about David Starr. I believe through this girl. I think there was up to 6 names that had spoken out against him.
This is very
Yeah.
similar to all the stuff with Jeffrey Epstein and the
Yes.
Me Too movement.
We'll get to that in a second. So David Starr had put out a statement about that he's not a sexual predator, but he was a bad partner, and that it was a very odd statement he put out about. I think his interpretation might have been different than hers, but then he said a term called gray rape, where it's like gray area rape. It didn't make a lot of sense, and I'm not gonna try to decipher that because I didn't quite get where he was going with that.
Yeah.
His statement really did him no favors. He got attacked mercilessly over that on Twitter, and basically said that he's been awful and he's in counseling, and if his career is over, so be it. And he got attacked heavily for addressing it but not addressing it, apologizing but not apologizing, and he ended up deleting his Twitter account. A hashtag started out of this called speaking out. So what had happened on the heels of David Starr was a lot of women in and out of the industry began using this hashtag to describe their experiences with a lot of male wrestlers within the industry. And we'll get to it in a little bit. There was also some allegations against female wrestlers too, but primarily this was about young female wrestlers and girlfriends and spouses of female wrestlers or male wrestlers. So this became a big Twitter trend that's actually trended worldwide to the point where it's ended up on the Forbes website, describing how big of a movement this is. There's a lot of wrestlers that have been named in misconduct on here. I'm not sure. Do you have anywhere you want to start after David Starr?
How many wrestlers would you say that have been, I don't want to say outed because everything is allegations, and whether it's true or not, that's not for us to be talking about or whatever. However, how many wrestlers have been mentioned in this case?
Somebody had a list, and I don't know what the actual number is, but somebody had a list. They said it was around 75.
My gosh.
Now,
do you think I got now I need to play devil's advocate. Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is something behind these allegations, or do you think that this is just how the wrestling business is?
Well, I think it depends on the type of allegation, because there's different.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ones, right? There's like this is not just like,
I'll say this. There's one in particular that I really have an issue with. There may be, I want to be careful in how I say this, because there always can be somebody trying to get revenge on somebody.
Yeah.
But I don't want that to take away from what these people have come forward with, because if they are victims, and a lot of them appear to be victims, I don't want to take anything away from that.
Exactly.
Not an easy thing to speak out against, especially in the wrestling business. And you would know this more so than I would.
What are you trying to say?
You've been around wrestling longer than I have.
Okay.
In the sense that your reputation can determine whether you're going to stay around in the business. And we've heard over the years, and different names, and people have been blackballed from wrestling for various things.
Yeah.
And I just want to get into, there's one topic in particular that I really do want to address. And this one is the one that really does bother me. And it bothers me a lot.
Before you
There's
go,
a lot. Go
before
ahead.
you
Sorry.
just go into this, I just want to speak on something that you said earlier about how it's hard to come out and or come forward and speak about this. If you want to watch something interesting on Netflix, about maybe 3 weeks ago, they released a documentary on Jerry Epstein, and a lot of it had the girls come forward, and you got to see them, how they were put in the position, and how they were taken advantage of. And it was almost like a ring where it was like a what do you call it, like, you know, those scams, like a pyramid scam. It was almost
Yeah.
like that, where one would get other ones, and then they would get other ones, and they would get other ones. And to see these women, how it changed and altered the course of their life is, I mean, there's really nothing you can say about that. Like, it's heartbreaking, you know, because like
Yeah.
there was this one woman on there. I know this is a wrestling podcast, but there's this
It's
one
okay.
girl on there, and she basically said, like, she felt like she was a flower, like growing up. She was like very young when this happened. Like, we're talking about 15, 16. And she was like a flower, and she feels like somebody just came along and just stomped on her and left her there. And she was
Mm.
misused. So with that all being said,
Yeah.
like, whoever's coming forward and whoever came forward in the last 24 hours to be brave enough to do so, and if they truly are victims, I applaud them for doing so, because these people need to be outed, and these people need to be out of the business, and they need therapy, and they need counseling. And that's just what I gotta say about that as far as that goes.
Well, I would agree, but I think one thing I want to be kind of clear on this too. I mean, we're talking about wrestling, but this is deeper than that. This is a societal thing.
Yeah.
And I don't really have an answer for it other than we don't really, as a society, do a very good job in identifying red flags and issues with people and um, traumatic things that happens in people's lives to prevent these kind of things.
Yeah.
Because I really do believe in some instances, not all, but in some, if you catch an issue ahead of time, whether it's you seeing it in yourself or someone else seeing it in someone else, you can get on the right path. But when you get so far into a traumatic matter, it's very hard to come out of that.
And just to go back on the question that I asked you
Mm,
about whether, it's just the way the business is. What I thought about it, and it's very hard as somebody that, and we both, you know, it's like it just, and not just like with wrestling, but with everything, you're in a bubble.
yeah,
And with wrestling, there's a lot of machismo, if you will, a lot of, you know, food chain, top of the food chain type of things. So you might see something, but you kind of just brush it off or look the other way
yeah,
because it's wrestling, or, this person is who they are in the wrestling business. So it's, even though in normal society, this person, like, would be, you know, like,
well, that's part of a bigger problem right there is the doing nothing, right? Like you,
exactly. And that's what I'm saying.
like,
Like, this probably has, I mean, it has been happening
well,
for
well,
years.
there's a there's an actual TV show called Dark Side of the Ring.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I know, right? But obviously there is issues in wrestling. Like,
And,
I mean,
and I really just want to say this, that it's not just wrestling.
no,
We're,
it's not.
we're, in, we're coming to a certain point that this is happening in Hollywood. This is happening in workplaces all
Hmm.
across the world. It's just, it's hard because for those victims to take a step, and to come out because they know that they could be putting a lot on the line if they're just brushed off. And they're going out a lot of times it's against more powerful people, like people who
And
are
that's
in sort of power.
what I wanted to talk about. There is one circumstance that was repeated over and over again in this. So a lot of girls came out about training schools, and many of them had stated, and a lot of this, just to preface this again, a lot of this is in the UK scene, but I imagine a lot of it's prevalent on this side of the world. A lot of them had stated they were 14 or 15 entering wrestling schools. So I don't know what all the rules are overseas. I know in North America it's typically 18, and some schools will let you train early if you have parental consent. So a lot of the stories involve girls 14 and 15 that are essentially being taken advantage of by trainers, people running these schools, or trying to be manipulated by them, or trying to be coerced by them, or inappropriate conduct towards them. And this was a constant story that I read over and over with different names over and over again. Now, I don't know about you. I would have a hard time sending a 14-year-old girl to a wrestling school without supervision. And I'm not saying they can't go and try to learn. And I just think that, especially after reading all that, you got guys that are in their 30s telling these girls how great they look in their gear, and like, I mean, the comments were sickening, really. And like you, I have a daughter. It's disturbing. It's very, very disturbing. You know, we're talking fully grown men that should know better, that are trying to manipulate these girls, and I found that utterly, utterly disturbing. So that was that's the one scenario I kept reading over and over again, and it's like some of these guys are offering up places for them to stay so they can train in the morning or don't have to go home. One of them moved himself into a girl's parents' house. Like it's just, I don't even know what to say. It's just, it's very, very, it's disturbing. It's disturbing.
And like going back to that Epstein thing, most of those women or girls were that age, were about
Yes.
14 or 15, because it's probably a lot easier to manipulate someone that age, than
Yeah, I mean, because these aren't young trainees
no.
that are closer to their age. These are fully grown adults. And the problem here is it's a power thing. They have all the contacts and connections. So
Yeah.
you're taking somebody that's essentially a child and trying to control them. And it was just, that was a story. I must have read about, if I didn't read 10 different stories on that, I'd be shocked.
Wow. Like,
So
wow.
that's one scenario.
And I mean, like you, I don't understand how. I mean, maybe it's not the parent, but as a parent myself, I would not daughters.
Well,
I mean, if I go, first of all, I can just say this as a father. If
mhm,
I'm dropping my girls off when they're 14, 15
yeah,
at a dance recital or a dance place where they go learn dancing, I'm casing the joint. I'm going in. I'm meeting everyone there. You know, if
yeah.
it's full of guys, no, I'm going somewhere else.
I think I think today you have to do that because
I think I think in general, like, it's not even just a today thing. I think,
no, the only reason I say that is you think of how many stories outside of wrestling
yeah,
where you even have like a piano teacher, violin teacher that's alone with, you know, teenage girl. Like, it's just, I don't, wrestling's on a whole other level, right? And I'm assuming a lot of the parents just want to make their kids happy, right?
I'm
They
also
want to,
assuming that
They probably are manipulated by the people running the school. Will take care of them. Eh, I just, I couldn't. I would be weary of it if for any activity. But wrestling, I would. I mean, I don't know.
me,
I
wrestling
don't know.
is so different because it's very hands-on,
But yes,
right? So that's why, like, if it was wrestling, like, absolutely hell no. But even dance could be hands-on though.
oh yeah,
You know what I mean? So I can
figure
understand. I can
skating. I
understand,
mean,
like, but what I'm also thinking is that, like, a lot of parents might not be, very privy to this information. It might just be, you know, yeah, my 14-year-old daughter and her friend are training with these other boys who are probably, or these other kids, right? Kids that are 14. Like, have you ever seen Paige's movie or documentary, right?
I haven't seen it. No.
You never seen it? Well, like, I mean, when she was training, like, it looked like a bunch of kids training, and I'm assuming, like, that's what it probably is. It's,
Um,
so, but little, you know,
you
they're
wonder
easily
too.
can be taken advantage
You wonder too.
of.
Like I've been doing enough kids sports, right? Where some parents are there, some aren't, and a lot aren't even paying attention to the game or whatever either, right? So
Yeah, they're just talking.
I can't fathom
Well,
that.
I
I
got a
I
question
can't.
for you, and this is kind of getting off topic of wrestling, but not really to the conversation that we're having.
Yes.
I don't know anything about it, absolutely nothing. I just kind of read about it or heard about it in passing. What is going on with hockey right now, with the junior hockey, and is it something
So
similar to this?
e- sort of. So there's a lawsuit filed against the Canadian Hockey League. So for those that don't know, that's the Ontario Hockey League, Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and the Western Hockey League. They all fall under the Canadian Hockey League body. There's two players. One is a former NHLer, Dan Carcillo, who's quite controversial in his own right, but has been an advocate for mental health and in hockey. And there was another player that played in the Western Hockey League. They're both they both filed a lawsuit against the league for them knowing of abuse type issues that weren't addressed. So it's stuff like so if you're in junior hockey, if you're a rookie, you might be 16 years old. And if you're playing in the OHL, for example, you might be playing with 19, 20, 21-year olds. So now you're in a room, it's kind of a melting pot of ages. And basically, what happens, a lot of hazing at times in hockey, where, from what I understand, some of these players got stripped naked in bathrooms and spanked with goalie sticks, uh, stripped naked and whipped with belts while coaches and stuff were aware of it and even joined in. Um, there was another player that came out and said that he was 16. Him and another 16-year-old were forced in a bathroom with a older player who made them use cocaine before they could leave the bathroom. Um, there's a lot of sex type scenarios that they were forced to do. I mean, this is all alleged, obviously, um, but basically, it's a lot of abuse type issues that went on with older players against younger players, and they're citing they've had a lot of uh, mental issues, emotional issues due to the conduct that's been going on there. So that would be
Now, this okay. I was just trying to search for the term because it's escaping me. But is there anything about sponsor families? What's the term? I can't think of it.
billet families.
Billet families. Yes, thank you. Anything with
I didn't.
that? Because I can see
I
that being that could possibly be like a major,
Well, yeah, I haven't seen anything with billet families. So
which is
the
good.
thing with the thing with hockey is billet families generally are pretty checked. They're not, as a rule, a problem. But at the same time, a player, like, is he gonna go and tell the billet family that is being abused in the dressing room and potentially lose their spot. It's the same thing in wrestling.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the same thing in wrestling. Like, I don't want to lose my spot. Someone's going to take my spot.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's any different in any sport, really. Like, if I speak up, am I gonna lose? Am I gonna lose any opportunities? And that's kind of what we're looking at here. Anyway, that was one aspect of this. There were a lot of abuse allegations from relationships, rape allegations, just mental and emotional abuse with different people. I guess we can go down some of the accusations.
Yeah, we're not going to sit here and
No, I
but
think
like
some of the prominent ones will.
yeah, we're not going to sit here and say, oh, this person, this person, this person. We'll just say the major, like you said, the prominent ones. Like for instance, Jack Gallagher got fired.
Yeah, so he was released not long before we started the show.
Yeah.
Now he had a rape allegation,
Which
and
WWE being a publicly traded company, whether they just don't want their hands in that.
so it's interesting with WWE, and we'll get to the other ones, but they have, I want to say they have 3 or 4 investigations going right now.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, so Jordan
Devlin, Joe Coffey,
Joe Coffey,
Al Larego, Al Ligerio. I can't say it. I don't know how to say it.
Legero,
Ligero. And then
Matt Riddle.
Matt Riddle, yes. And then there was one more, Travis
Banks.
Thank you.
Okay, so Banks and Devlin, and I think Riddle, they all put statements out saying, we take this seriously and we're investigating this.
Yeah.
But Gallagher's gone. So either there was substantial evidence for this, or maybe they parted ways amicably. I don't know. I would think there must have been something where they were like, we can't do this. Because
they're a publicly traded company. When you get something like this is something that will be news.
But
like you said, Forbes picked up.
But like I said, the other ones were listed as investigation, and he was fired. So there had to be something substantial. Mm-hmm. Jordan Devlin was accused of physically assaulting a female, and this girl had posted pictures on social media, bruises and everything. Jordan Devlin's put a statement denying it. I can't remember all the Joe Coffey one off the top of my head.
You don't have,
But I do want to touch on a couple of them.
Yeah.
Matt Riddle's was basically a sexual assault accusation.
And his lawyer put out the statement.
His lawyers put out a statement saying it's false. And some screenshots of Riddle have come out about how he's saying this girl has been stalking him and he's had to change his number, and yeah, that's pretty ugly.
Now, do you think, because he debuted on SmackDown this past week?
I watched it.
So
before the show.
Now, I just want to say this. Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to say this. When SmackDown was recorded on Wednesday, and all this came out Thursday.
So, yeah, but his came out today, I think.
Okay, even still, WWE might have or might not have had time to pull that segment.
I wonder. I think that was probably on the table because they pulled his preview off the website.
Oh.
So there was speculation if his match was going to air. It did air. I watched just to see if they would take it out, and they built up a huge debut for him too. So, spoiler: he wrestled AJ Styles.
Well, it won't be a spoiler because by this
if you haven't seen it,
you haven't seen SmackDown by now.
But he wrestled and defeated AJ Styles. So they were banking on a huge debut for him.
Probably a run or a feud or a program with the IC title.
I would think, but I mean, it'll be that's the subsequent weeks that'll be interesting. Do they put him on
Yes.
TV?
Now,
Right?
did they record next week's or this week's SmackDown already? Or did they only? I think they only recorded the
I
one
think
week.
they just did this week, and I think they're doing tapings next week for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, because
Could
that
be,
was a whole clusterfuck. Or
which
sorry, I
we
didn't
can.
mean to
That's
swear,
okay,
but that's exactly what it was.
and we'll get to that
Yeah.
after. But you know, how do you, if you're one of the major companies, you're not just going to fire somebody unless there's just cause. So how
Yeah.
do you handle the talent while these accusations are going on? Do
On
you pull
camera
them
or
off
off?
on camera?
Well, so like for instance, a case like Matt Riddle, like usually they would just pull them off TV, probably. I mean, then again, they didn't do that with Velveteen Dream.
Yeah, but I think that one cleared up from
Did
what
it
I was
though?
reading. I was reading that today.
Okay,
So
because I didn't
I
see
don't know the deep.
anything
Yeah,
where
I believe, and don't quote me on this, that they resolved that issue. It was found to either be untrue or there wasn't enough circumstantial evidence to
gotcha.
do anything with. That, don't quote me on that, but that's how I read it.
So, but they did not take him off TV, and he was in a major program with Adam Cole.
Right.
So I
I
can't
know.
see them taking Matt Riddle off TV unless something else comes out. Where if that's the case, they'll just kill the angle. They'll work their
So
WWE magic and kill it, whether it be he was taken out off camera and write him out of storyline. However, I can see them going forward with this, but just not maybe making him as seem to be as important as they originally were going to.
so I believe WWE had a meeting with the talent today about this situation. I haven't seen any reports on it yet, but they had put out a statement that they were meeting with all the talent regarding, I don't know if it was based on sexual misconduct or what the case may be, but I mean, WWE is the one that has to address it the hardest.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're the biggest company, and they really got hit hard on this in the sense that a lot of the UK talent is fingered in this particular accusation. Like we mentioned, Jordan Devlin, Joe Coffey,
Travis
Wolfgang.
Banks.
Wolfgang's another one.
Oh,
Um, I mean, that's it's quite a few pieces to that roster. And then, because those guys still work with Progress too, and Progress cut ties with Devlin and Banks immediately.
yeah.
So it's, I mean, a lot of those independent companies in Europe in particular, basically put out statements that they're not working with like anybody. Now, for companies outside of WWE, there's names mentioned. AEW, Jimmy Havoc was a big topic as well.
And they have addressed that.
So AEW put out a statement that they were, I don't know if they were sending him or he's going or he's volunteered for I don't remember I don't have the quote in front of me, but basically the gist of it was that he's entering a rehab program.
Yeah.
So
And then after they will reevaluate his status as to whether he will still be employed by AEW or not.
so and I'm not going to get too deep in Jimmy Havoc, but I would say he was one of the most talked about wrestlers on social media in terms of conduct. A lot of it sounded like a lot of mental, emotional problems with him, self mutilation, abusive conduct towards partners and girls. And anyway, so AEW's address has put out a statement about that. Impact, there was Dave Christ had allegations against him too, which were very ugly as well. As of this time, I don't think Dave Christ has put out anything about it, but there was a lot of accusations towards him, abusive conduct. And then I need to make this clear too. There's different forms of abuse here when we're talking about different people. Obviously, we have sexual misconduct, abuse. There's a lot of emotional abuse. There's a lot of, controlling, coercion. There's so many different levels that have happened with this particular story. But there are people that are getting brought up that it's not the same. Like, someone threw Tyler Bates' name in there, and for a story about he had asked someone if they'd like to go back to their hotel room, and they said no, and he got thrown in for that. I didn't think it was appropriate for him to ask someone to go to his room, which I don't think is the same thing.
No, to me that is not the same thing. That's just getting rejected.
Right.
So, I mean,
I think you have to sift through some of that too, because I think that shouldn't be lumped in with an abusive situation.
no.
I mean, if you're an adult and you're asking somebody to go to your room, I don't think that's necessarily abuse. Now, if they don't take no for an answer, then yes, that's a different scenario.
Or if he verbally berates them afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, but
so that was one thing there. There was something else I was going to say with that too. But there's a lot of names getting thrown around there that are getting lumped into this, and I think it's important to differentiate what is abusive and what is.
So, you said a lot of verbal abuse, and that there's a lot of verbal abuse in wrestling.
Yes.
It's definitely, I mean, not just in wrestling, but everywhere. It's locker room talk. What it is, it's locker room talk. In 2020, locker room talk might not be acceptable because of the way that society is right now, like in this day and age. A lot of people are not taking hazing and verbal abuse, even if it's done in a tongue-in-cheek or happy manner, or I don't know about happy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But my question, do you think professional wrestling, the industry itself, backstage, will change because of all of this? Or do you think this is something that will be kind of swept under the rug?
I think the easy answer would be that I would think companies will just hope that it just dies down. But you and I live in Canada, right? There was the whole thing with Don Cherry earlier or late last year.
Yeah.
That normally would have just went away, but Twitter wouldn't let that go.
No.
Right.
Well, and Twitter, I believe, gives people a voice that normally wouldn't have a voice.
Right. So there's other scenarios. I mean, we're seeing it with Black Lives Matter, right? Like, people are going to keep fighting for that. And when something trends, it's trends, and people will not stop.
Yeah.
If they feel it's important, it's not going to stop, right? And for situations like that, they shouldn't stop. That should be a focus. A situation like this, I don't think should stop either. I mean, if and again, if these allegations are true, that it should be addressed.
How do you think that they would address it though? Because I mean, like for instance, we were talking about hockey, the hockey locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to always have a coach in there? In wrestling, are you going to have somebody that's human resources, even for companies that aren't WWE?
I think it's very difficult for a company that's not WWE or an AEW.
Because I mean, anyone can have allegations against whatever company,
Well, here here's a good example. Shane Helms put on Twitter that he had he'd been around long enough that he worked shows where they don't even have separate dressing rooms,
No.
right? And he said he never felt comfortable with that. And he doesn't think stuff like that's right. But if you really think about it, if you have somebody in there that is a predator, let's say, or they have, you know, mental issues, they're whatever the case is, and they're changing around women or women are changing around them. Do you not see that being an issue?
Yeah.
So the independent scene is not really monitored, right? I think we can agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know how you regulate it unless there's
And that could be a problem. What if you have to regulate it? What if it comes to the point where everything has to be regulated? Then we're looking at costs that a lot
see
of
I
businesses won't want to, incur, and they'll go up. There won't be
well,
as many.
I'm not as familiar with how wrestling licenses work, promoters licenses. You might know more than me on this. I don't know. I know years ago there was a lot of controversy in Ontario here where they passed laws that made it easy, like anybody could run a show.
Yeah. You just need insurance.
Right. So if anybody can run a show, anybody can run a show.
Exactly. So that's why I'm asking, like, should there be something in place, a commission for, shows like maybe even plays, not just professional wrestling. What about plays? Any theatrical performance have a commission where they have to pay for this commission to get a license to put on a show.
It would it would take some real power brokers to do it. So people that are heavily involved in that side of the business would have to implement it
And
because
and that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of indie promoters, or you know, they don't have the money to do this, and they won't do this. So if this happened, we would see a lot, and I mean a lot, of indie promotions fold up. But would that be a bad thing? Because that means that the ones that you are seeing, that are out there, are commissioned, are governed.
I would, yeah, I don't think it'd be a bad thing because as
But then you have a lot less work for indie wrestlers.
I know, but it's the quality, not the quantity. I would, I would think. How many shows have you been to where the rings are garbage, ropes are garbage, the venue's garbage? I'm not disparaging indie wrestling, but I think that's a fact, right? How many shows have you been to at the independent level that are cheap?
Yeah, it's true. I
Like
mean, I've
not
been
it,
very blessed because a lot of indie promotions that I've been to, a lot of the shows
right?
are run by top quality people.
Right. I
But
mean,
I
we
have been to shows like that, maybe, you know,
right. So if they're run like that for the fans, how are they run backstage? So
true. I remember being at a show where it was at a fair, and like the boys, I don't, and there's girls on the show, so maybe they're basically dressing under the bleacher, under
yeah,
the grandstand,
yeah, and it's you
which
know,
they should have it like a tent or something.
y- I don't know how you fix it at the independent level.
I mean, but this is where where a lot of the problems are coming from.
I know, but
Like,
I think this. I think it starts with the schools. Like from
should the
what
schools have to have a license to operate?
the schools, there should be strict policies on underage kids for sure
I
in the
agree with
schools.
that. I agree with that.
I think, and I think if you're a female, especially underage female, you should be training primarily with females. I
I
don't
mean,
think that's
you could bring up the argument that every school should have a male and female trainer, but that might not solve the case, because
no,
who's to
but
say that the female doesn't engage in the same activity?
well, I'm glad you brought that up because there was a story about that. TJ Perkins put out a statement about that he was taken advantage of at 15 by female wrestlers that were 22, 22, and that he's always felt awful about it. Something's like he felt something was wrong with that he didn't wear it as the badge of courage that guys would. Like he felt taken advantage of.
Well, yeah.
But so you're right, and it can go both ways.
Yeah.
But here, do you think anybody under 18 should be training to be a wrestler?
No, absolutely not. I
Yeah,
know.
I don't either.
I know, like you hear about it, you know, but
I mean it's not the whole problem. But a lot of the stories I read were that problem, and that's one part of it. And I would again that it's disturbing.
yeah,
And I think I don't know.
it's hard because
again,
we don't know what the UK is like.
you got to remember there's a lot of people that are training wrestlers that are, independent people that really haven't done a lot in the business and probably have their own indiscretions, their own issues.
I mean, one of the names that you brought up was Dave Chris, and
Right.
a lot of what was brought up was done because I believe it was at his wrestling school, correct?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I've met Dave a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I would never, he always seemed professional to me, like I would not.
But you don't know him on a personal level either.
I don't know him. I don't know like a guy like Dave Chris, who I met a couple of times, even though I think I'm, he's professional when I've met, I would not trust him with my kids, right? Because I don't know him.
Right. But here's the thing, right? If you entered wrestling school and you don't know anybody, but you got to put your trust into your trainer.
Well, here's the thing, right? Okay. I trained briefly at wrestling school.
Yes.
Okay. And you're talking about trust. The first thing in wrestling, above all else, is you got to be able to trust the person you're in the ring with, because you're trusting them with your body and your life, that you can walk out of there unscathed. So the first thing when you step into wrestling school, the very first thing that you have to know is that you can trust everybody in that school. Because if you can't, then why the hell are you in the ring with them, right? That's your body. You're not, you know what I'm saying? Am I making sense here?
Yeah, because it can be over in a second.
If I'm in the ring right now with anyone, and whether they're my trainer or not, if I do not trust them,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to put myself in that position. I have to be able to trust them. So what you're doing is you're instantly almost saying, hey, I trust you. You're my trainer. You're my co-worker or co-student, wrestler, whatever. I trust you. You leave yourself vulnerable.
I think we're missing one vital part of this, though. If you're a wrestler, you've been in the business for a while, you're always working. So if you're the trainer, I'm not saying everybody's like this, but essentially a wrestler, you work the crowd, you con the crowd into whatever you want them to do. If you're really good at it, they can work in their everyday life too, right?
Yeah.
Well, trust me. This is the school you got to be at. Trust me.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a predator or somebody that's taking advantage of people, you're working whether you're a wrestler or not in your everyday life.
I agree, but a wrestler probably can take that to another level. I would think.
Maybe.
And I'm not an expert on the subject, but the predator subject, but that's what wrestlers do every day.
Yeah.
It's what they do. They do every day, right? And if you're, on TV, you're obviously you've succeeded in doing that at some point. Like you've been able to convince people to buy into your persona, buy this T-shirt support me. I don't know. It's man.
It's a really shitty situation.
So I think the thing to watch for now is to see what really does change in wrestling. I don't think WWE doesn't have a choice. I don't think they can afford any more bad publicity.
You gotta bet your bottom dollar that the evil big machine that WWE may be, that with something like this, they're on it. And they are not taking it lightly. Even though it could be argued that this stuff happens in WWE all the time. You know, we've all heard stories about ex-talent who come out and say, so and so, this is the culture backstage. So and so is like this, or the management's like this, or you're always walking on eggshells.
Well, I mean, it's even recent in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Like you had the thing with you've had stuff with Mauro Ranallo,
yeah, that's a
right?
great
Like
example right there.
like you had the issue with allegedly with JBL.
And see, and this is the point that I was trying to bring up at the beginning, where it's hard in something like wrestling because that culture has been around since almost its inception.
Yes.
Wrestling is very, very hard nosed. Back then, you don't miss a date. You're injured, you still work. You're sick, you still work. You're someone in your family dies and there's a funeral. Don't miss any dates, brother. You'll be there.
Yeah.
Wrestling's very hard nosed. It very is. As much everyone says, it's like a fraternity. I know, women included into that. It's a brotherhood, a sisterhood. But at the same time, just like we were talking about hockey with the hazing, there's a different culture in the locker room than there is out on the rink or the ring or the field or the court.
Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
universal. Universal. And it's been like that for a long time.
Well, I'll give you a good example. Just watch the documentary Lipstick and Dynamite.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking stuff going back to the 30s.
I mean, even all the stuff with Fabulous Moolah. There's that Dark Side of the Ring season 1 with all those allegations. This is
I
nothing.
mean,
Everything, even though we're talking about it, even though it's on social media, even though people are hearing about it, this is something that is not new at all by the slightest. It's just
no.
more light being shed on. Now,
I mean, we're talking about it, so yes, like it's
it's
like
topical, yeah.
yeah, but it's a serious issue.
It's very serious, but
This
here's the
was
thing.
this
How
was
do
not
you
a topic
change?
we were going to talk about
No,
originally.
no,
And
no. We try to keep this show very, very, more lighthearted than this. This is going to be one of our deeper episodes. But my question is, how do you change something that's been like this for so long, and that it's almost the culture, like JBL, hazing and bullying Mauro Ronaldo? Like,
well,
are we going to really see like this change? Do you think like it can be implemented? And if so, like what's going to change about the product on TV, what we're seeing? Are we going to see a different product?
I don't know how to word this. I would think I can see I can see there's been cultural changes in the last couple of years anyway, because you have younger talent that fall into the millennial category that isn't as ego driven per se, which there's
Yeah,
pros and cons to that.
for sure. I
And the
believe,
other,
I just want to say, I believe on our age, where we're at, we're in our 30s, 40s, we're on the line of the old guard and the new guard.
yes.
We've witnessed both. I would
Hmm.
say when I was training, it was very old guard. Like it was very, very much like the 80s, 90s type of mentality. I think if tomorrow, God forbid, I step foot back into a wrestling school, which obviously I never would at this age, I feel it would be very, very different and more welcoming. And that's not to say that it wasn't like that before. It's just it was a different time and place.
Even in the time I've been going to shows, and I probably went to my first indie show probably in '03, maybe '04. The people even that go to the shows is completely different now. And what I mean by that is when I was going years ago, the fans were more volatile than they are now.
Crotch chopping, vulgar chants.
Yes. I don't know how to say this,
You know,
but I
the
can remember
attitude era that everyone loves.
I hope we talk about that one day. But even females in the crowd, there was a lot more, and I had seen this where wrestlers were coming up to them intermissions and after the shows, and I have seen that at indie shows before, and it looked more than just a fan interaction. Could be wrong,
Well,
but I
some of
don't
them,
really
I
I
could
don't
say,
really see that anymore.
some of them
I don't
have their
really.
girlfriends or family there.
Well, the wrestlers, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
There's more of
that's the
that
thing.
now.
You
Yes.
don't know who is who, right?
No, I can tell you, I, it was different. Let me just say that.
Okay.
Um, so now it's a lot different. So when there's girls at shows, typically I find they're super fans. They're
More
more
like Comic
interested.
Con.
Yes, they're more that type of crowd. So I do find the culture itself has changed. Even I don't I don't know how to explain it. And you're probably way better to speak to this than I am, but even the last few years backstage at shows is a different vibe than it was previously. It's much calm, like it's much more I don't know how to explain it. It's
See
just
that,
there's
like I said, you say that, but it's very hard because the promotion that I was so much involved with was always very, very, very professional.
yeah.
Like that's like I can't say,
No,
there
I'm
was
not
like a
saying
lot of
in
carny.
I'm not saying in an unprofessional way. I'm just
Yeah,
saying I'm just saying like the wrestlers are more just more calm. They're not
yeah, they are.
that's where I was going with that. So the
Like the people
culture,
you're talking about, like the people in the business, like the
yes,
workers.
yes,
Yeah, they're a different breed than what they were, like I said, with the old guard.
yeah. So I think there already is a cultural change happening, and then as you probably in the next you probably go 10 years from now, it's gonna be even different because
See,
it's
but it's very intriguing to see where it's going to go. Like, I believe we're going to start seeing possibly a lot of people in the wrestling business, like becoming professional wrestlers that we wouldn't see before because maybe they would have been scared out of it.
and you got to remember too, a lot of the accusations that have been put on wrestlers, a lot of these wrestlers are older. They're well over 30, right?
They're
They're
probably
not
our
that,
age.
right? So they've been in that, they were on that dividing line you were talking about. So
Yeah.
it's stuff, not all of them, most of them I found are older. But that's kind of it's a generation gap. And I think that's part of it too. And eventually they'll be weeded out, right? And you got to figure they're already going to be a lot of them are already be weeded out because promotions aren't going to touch these guys.
No.
A lot of them won't. So a lot of them are indie workers, and companies like Progress and OTT and uh, I can't think of the other one, but they're basically washing their hands of these talent. David Starr was the champion in two different promotions in Europe for two major companies, and they stripped him. They stripped him of his titles. Don't want nothing to do with him. So it's I can see the change already happening. I don't will or there will always be there'll always be somebody in wrestling or any business or whatever that mistreats people or
Exactly. Like this is not something that is just strictly a wrestling conversation. This is
I
something
think
I can't say
yeah.
this enough that this is something that happens everywhere in every different walk of life, every different platform. And right now, a lot of it, and here's the thing: I don't think like this all started. I would say with the Epstein movement, this Me Too movement.
Hmm.
I think that was just the beginning. I don't think we're going to see it's going to be like a quick end. Like this is going to be a gradual process that we're going to see more people coming out. I mean, we saw Kesha. She had a big with her record producer. That was a big issue.
Hmm.
So it's affecting the music industry. It's affecting the movie industry with the Weinstein affecting.
Well, you got to think how many celebrities over the years have you heard that have had allegations against them for inappropriate conduct?
Yeah, Kevin Spacey. He's, he,
I think that thank
it,
you. You know
it,
what? And that's a good example because he was one of my favorite actors. American
really?
Beauty's one. Yeah,
I
he
didn't think
was.
he was that great. He
No,
ain't no Edward Norton,
good actor. Um,
one of my favorites.
but no, but I one of my favorite movies was American Beauty.
Yeah.
Love that movie. I don't think I can watch it now, and I don't know. I don't know. It's just one of those. Think about my grandma growing up. Always loved Bill Cosby. Doesn't have any use for him now,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
It tarnishes, not only does it tarnish their reputation, but it tarnishes everything.
yeah,
Because not only will we ever see Kevin Spacey in anything, probably not. Most definitely not. But like you said, you can't watch American Beauty, and that's something that he did before. You know, it's almost like, to bring it back to wrestling, and I don't want to go too much into this. I just want to make this statement. It's almost like Chris Benoit, because you got a lot of people that won't even they can't even bring themselves to watch a match like WrestleMania 20, or like,
yeah.
any other match like a SmackDown or anything on the network or anything. They can't bring themselves to watch it because of knowing what he did, you know.
And wrestling has an obsessive fan culture.
The
An
wrestling
upset,
fan is wired differently than a lot of other fans.
right? So there's that obsessive fan culture, and it goes one or two ways in this instance because they love said wrestler, right? They'll deny the allegations for said wrestler, even though we don't know what's true and not true, or they'll completely abolish their fandom of that person and go off the deep end. There's no in between here. Wrestling fans are so obsessive, and that's why part of why I think this thing is just blowing up as big as it is.
You know, it brought me. I was thinking about this, and it brings me to this idea thought I had, and that it's almost kind of sickening in a way. But I've noticed that there's like a lot of the wrestling fan base that they almost thrive on when something like this happens. Not necessarily this, but something where it's like something outrageous or something real life outside of the ring, outside of what you're supposed to watch on TV.
Yeah.
But they thrive on like, oh my God, did you hear? And then they go into there's actually, I know somebody, you know, I work with, like, he doesn't even watch wrestling pretty much like on a week to week basis, but he knows all the dirt, and that's all he talks about is the dirt, you know.
Yeah.
And it's because for some reason, like, that's that's like a part of wrestling. It's a drama outside the ring that a lot of people find more interesting than the drama inside the ring. And in fact, the typical wrestling fan, no matter what you say or how you think you are that person. I'm that person.
Yes.
Because if we weren't, we would not be digging or talking about or enjoying Dark Side of the Ring.
I think I said it 2 weeks ago. Fans don't view wrestlers as actors. They don't.
No.
They don't view them in the same way. And that's why they don't go and call them by their real names.
And it's hard because
and they have to be on. They have to be on.
They have to be on 24/7, which it's tough. And it's funny though, because you see a lot of wrestlers that are trying to have that separate life on Twitter.
I don't think
you
they
have
can.
Jordan Grace going as Trisha, her real name Trisha Parker, who plays Jordan Grace. There's another one. I think it was like Matt Cardona, before he got fired, was going by Matt Cardona. Like a lot of these people, these wrestlers, they're trying to use their real name. And this kind of brings me back to a separate topic that we had before, of where I said that, you have to separate yourself. You can't have 15,000 or Twitter followers as your real name if they're there for your actor.
But even if you use your real name, you're still that wrestler. It's to me, it's irrelevant.
But see,
fans are going to view you that way anyway.
They will, but that's why you have to be like, okay, on Twitter, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to use her as an example. It has nothing to do with her, but I'm just going to use her as an example. As Jordan Grace, okay? She, like, for instance, if I was her, okay, I'm just using her name. Okay, you know what? I don't want to use her name because I don't want to. It has nothing to do with her. I'm going to use me. Okay.
Okay.
I'm a wrestler, D-Rock. Okay. And then I'm also Derek, the human being, the person, the real person.
Yes.
I'm going to have a Twitter account for D-Rock, the wrestler. I'm going to tweet about things that D-Rock would tweet about. However, I'm going to have a separate one for Derek. And I'm going to tweet about stuff that I personally, it might not even have anything to do with wrestling, but if I want to talk about the hockey game, I'm going to use that Twitter account. If I want to talk about my opponent this Friday night at the Nassau Coliseum, I'm going to use a Derek Twitter account. I think that's where the line should be drawn.
Well,
You have to show people, no, this is me. But see, and this is where it's hard, though. This is where it's hard. I understand. Before you say it, I understand. This is where it's hard because you're promoting yourself. And D-Rock's Derek's brand. And if I want to sell T-shirts and I want to do all this, I need to be that person.
Well, first of all, props to saying the Nassau Coliseum, because that's pretty cool.
I'm old school like that.
There you go.
R.I.P.
It's still there. They remodeled it. Yeah.
I thought they tore it down.
No, they redid it because Islanders played some games there last year.
Oh, really?
That's a big fight with Brooklyn. Anyway, that's a whole conversation. So I think they will be tearing it eventually. But what I was going to say is, you could change your name on Twitter, or you can have two different Twitters. You're still the character at the end of the day because you're still putting yourself into that character. I don't care what any of the wrestlers want to say that they're playing a character. That's their image. That's their likeness.
But you can say that for any movie actor.
It's not the same.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator.
No.
Sylvester Stallone, Rocky.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
Why do they get to different Rocky from Sylvester Stallone?
Has Sylvester Stallone played any other characters in his career?
Well, so has wrestlers.
Not really, unless you're John Tenta.
Ed Leslie.
Right, but
my point being though is that you play different gimmicks, you play different characters and that. And you know what though? Maybe not so much now, but you know,
No one goes up to Ed Leslie and says, "Hey, Zodiac."
I would. Yes.
They're like, they're
No.
like, "Hey," they're like, "Hey, Brutai."
Would I? Yes. No.
But it's like the point I'm just trying to make is they can differentiate if they want, and I understand why they want to do that. In the fans' eyes, it's not going to matter. They're gonna go up to Jordan Grace to call her Jordan.
And, you know, I know why they do that. Like, I know why wrestling fans don't differentiate Jordan Grace from Trisha Parker. Yet they will Sylvester Stallone from Rocky. I understand. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, I get it.
And
I
the
get it.
simple reason is this: wrestling has always been portrayed as sport. You take that person, they're an athlete. Athletes don't have, you know, gimmicks, right? They don't play people. That's them.
Well, I don't know about that.
No, that's them though. Like, you know, even if they play like a gimmick, like I know you got some athletes that might play a heel, but you know, like you're going to go up to anyone, and that's them, who they are. Like, you know, if like LeBron James,
Okay.
LeBron
Do you
James,
do you think Floyd Mayweather is any different in real life than he is on TV?
no.
But he's doing the gimmick thing. He's money and
You mean he
he
doesn't just walk into his barber and be like throwing bills up in the air and
he owned his own Brinks truck.
yeah,
Anyway,
that's him.
right, right. So, but he's amplifying that. The point is, the point of it is, you put work into a character, people are still gonna recognize you. And even if you're trying to say that's just my wrestling character, chances are there's a good portion of you that's actually that character anyway. So, or you're becoming that character and don't even know
Well,
it.
we always hear that the best gimmicks at work is in wrestling is you set your volume to 10,
Yes.
which is basically you appear, you know. So I can see that. I
It's
don't even know
it's
how we got on this topic.
no the we were just talking about the atmosphere in wrestling and working essentially. So
Yeah.
anyway, people are trying how the business is changing with the millennial generation. So main topic, we were talking about what's going to happen in the future, and the point of it was this generation is, I think, already weeding that out, and this will probably finish it off.
There you go. I
I
don't
don't
know
know what
if
else
we
to
should
say.